Hi everyone, nice to see you again, or see you virtually again. This YouTube clip looks at our second piece of assessment, and I'm using the clip to take you through the key elements that I want you to take notice of. I'll talk about some of the possibilities and possible evidence that you might like to consider using, structure, and also unpack a little bit of the criteria. So it's really going to feature more as an overview and lead on to other work that we're going to do in preparation for assessment 2. So hello again, and I'll take you into our next slide. Task 2 looks at putting together a portfolio. Now the task is written for a portfolio, however, as I have said to you face to face and in email communication since, if you would like to negotiate a different way of putting together this piece of work that matches the criteria, I'm really happy to negotiate. So put your thinking caps on, be creative. If you don't want to go down this evidence-based portfolio model, I'm really excited to see other options that you put forward. However, I'll take you through the portfolio so you understand the base from which I'm working from. So the portfolio that we have putting forward for assessment 2 is a 3-part portfolio. That is, there's 3 key pieces that we want you to be addressing. And one of the key pieces looks at a set of teaching standards and matching your current practice and collecting evidence about your current practice that talk to these standards. Now the standards are also negotiable. In our formal assessment 2 worksheet, you will see that we use the HRDSA professional standards. Now I don't mind if you want to use a number of those. In some instances, what the HRDSA standards outline do not match your role description, and I want to narrow down the portfolio to just being teaching and learning. So if you look at the HRDSA professional standards, which are on the assessment 2 worksheet, and they feel like they fit well with you, let's stick with them. My other option, actually I have a number of options, and I'll leave it to that slide before I start talking to it. So there are 3 key parts. Now part 1 is your philosophy of teaching. Now as you know, our first piece of assessment got you to unpack your philosophy of teaching. In this assessment, I want you to condense it down a little bit, finesse it, make it tighter, and if you had gaps that were identified, try and fill those gaps. So I want you to outline a philosophy in regards to your current teaching and learning context, your specific discipline area, about discipline-specific pedagogy, discipline-specific knowledge and skills and assumptions, and also historical ways of teaching that your particular discipline takes up, your own personal teaching beliefs and values, and how you sit in connection to what we've already explored, the teaching and learning literature. Now for many of you, you're going to be able to just bring most of your work across and finesse it down for this part. We only need 500 to 750 words to start off this part 1. I now turn to part 2, and part 2 is the large body of work that this portfolio looks to, and it's the statements and evidence addressing the standards. Now this is the core part of the work, looking at 2,500 to around 3,500 words. And what I'm asking you to do here is align your teaching practice to selected set of standards. You get to select the standards. You can narrow them down and focus in on 3 or 4 if you want to, as long as you let me know what your intentions are. In this part of your assessment, you're going to draw on the wider literature, but also from evidence from your teaching practice to show how you are meeting these standards. Now, Now, one of the big issues for students as they come to this particular task is what are the standards. Now, I'd like you to consider, as I've said, the Hertz Fellowship standards that are on the assessment, where it looks at things like concern for learning, assessment, or also things like catering for different types of learners. So they're the sorts of things that are unpacked in the Hertz Fellowship criteria. You would have seen that I also sent through 4 key criteria from technical teachers. That it was a project that developed out of Washington. That might sit much more comfortably with how you see your teaching practice. Now, the last time I worked with the Polytech, they used their teaching award criteria. And I'm putting this in here even though I'm uncertain about what your teaching award criteria may be. I haven't been able to get anyone to be forthcoming with it. But the 4 criteria that my previous group have written to are 4 things. 1, an aim or a standard to develop students holistically for work, life and learning. So that very much a futures orientation towards learning development, to engage the students in their learning, to promote higher order learning and thinking, and to build rapport and relationships. Now that may suit you more. So these, so far, they're the 3 sets of standards I've put up for you to consider. You might find something more suitable somewhere else, and that's fine. Just email me, we'll talk about it over email. The second big question for students as they come to this task is, oh my goodness, what actually counts as evidence? And so I've given you a list of possible evidence, and I'd also like to expand on this in this YouTube. So you might like to give me snippets or very small examples of planning that shows how you have lived out this standard in your practice. You might give me a learning resource such as a criteria sheet or a set of questions or assignment tasks that demonstrates you've got your students doing higher order thinking, or you've been thinking about how you engage them in group work, and that learning resource is a beautiful piece of evidence and backs up what you're trying to say. You may like to give me reviews of your teaching. Now, I know that you do very formal reviews where someone comes in and watches you actually do the teaching. I'm probably more interested in feedback from students or colleagues who are interested in how you engage, how you're doing your assessment, any moderation practices, your innovative ideas, anything outside of standing up and doing that very mechanical presence in the classroom of meeting objectives, all those sorts of things. Obviously that's still very important, but you might like to invite people to comment on what you're doing in a broader sense for this particular piece of work. Reflective journals. Now, I haven't seen a lot of people use this, but I truly believe that reflective statements or journals where you have analysed a particular incident and put forward your analysis and then your next step in terms of your practice are incredibly powerful. And I will make one of these available to you via email that I've done recently for a promotion application that I was doing. You may like also to use student work or even student results, where you've been able to assist a cohort to really improve their results, or student assessment pieces to provide evidence of the claims that you're making in your portfolio. Obviously, if you are using student work or student assessment, I would like it all to be anonymous and for you to de-identify any comments from the students or use pseudonyms so that I have no idea where this particular piece of data comes from. You may like to point to the on-learning profession, to point to ongoing professional learning that you are undertaking, which does include this master's unit or master's program that you are currently involved in. But it also includes a number of you are talking about other programs that you have already done to strengthen your teaching skills, whether they were required programs or whether they were programs that you sought out personally. This also includes watching DVDs, reading books, as long as you can show how that level of learning has impacted on your practice. And finally, I would invite you to consider your ongoing involvement with the industry, the community and industries that you all are highly connected with. I remember people talking about, particularly the maritime group, where they were talking about going back into industry to keep their skills updated. That shows strong evidence about your willingness to update skills, to keep your finger on the pulse, and to have enormous currency in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I'm hoping that that evidence slide now gives you a bit of an idea about what I want you to be doing. The very final part of this task is it comes down to a very small task. It's a reflective statement. It does have a criteria attached, so do not be mistaken. It is important. I do value this. It outlines areas of your teaching and possibly the associated standard that you want to focus on in the future. What do you want to explore? What do you want to develop? You might even talk about possible ideas or approaches or even strategies that you've seen and you want to embed into your practice. Again, it has to be connected to the literature, keeping in mind that we're working at a master's level here, and our scholarly approach does require that you demonstrate you know what's out there in the wider literature. When we come to mark this work, or when I come to mark this work, there are 3 key criteria, and I want to make sure that you are very aware of them, because as you would have seen from our last feedback loop, and then the summative submission, and then my feedback, I do pay enormous attention to the minutiae here. So the first criteria is trying to connect your philosophy of teaching with your specific discipline area and the current teaching and learning context. That criteria lifts immediately from that previous work you have done and is embedded here. The second criteria is this ability to critically reflect on your own practice using evidence to demonstrate and support your claims and align it with these particular standards. Now, this means that you may have appendices where you say, I've done this in this particular lesson plan. If you want to see the details, it's in Appendix C. But this lesson plan that looked at blah, 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 the students loved, and this is the feedback that they gave me, and a few quick anonymous statements. And finally, the criteria, that final third one, is key readings in every section of the work. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. What I am going to also do following up the upload of this YouTube is send you 2 examples. Now, they're not going to be full examples. They're going to be 2 standards that 2 very different people have put together. And you will see how they have tried to unpack the standard, to talk about their own practice in regards to this particular standard, and link it to evidence and data to try and substantiate the claim that they are demonstrating this standard. Hoping that this YouTube clip helps you wrap your head around it a little bit more, and I will be organising either a collaborate or another way to liaise with everybody as we go forward in preparing for this next piece of assessment. Bye-bye.